Eugene, and I have two questions. It's hard to decide which one, but
Pick the best one.
about the Marketplace Fairness Act. I understand that you are not in support of that.
What is the name of it?
The Marketplace Fairness, the sales tax.
I'm not supportive of the sales tax.
And, no, the fact that most states are suffering because they can't collect sales tax from mail order.
Yes, right.
You know what I mean.
Yes, I do.
And could you make some comments on that? I know it doesn't affect Oregon directly, but
Yes.
some things like the hotel
Yes.
tax are similar.
So this is a national bill. Senator Durbin of Illinois championed it. Senator White and I both opposed it. It did pass the Senate, but it did not make it all the way through to the Oval Office. But essentially what it said is states like Oregon, the retailers here would have to collect the tax for all the other taxing jurisdictions that have sales tax across the country. The states, the counties, I mean, I think it was something like 1,500 jurisdictions that an Oregon retailer would have to collect the tax on their behalf and forward it. And actually, you know, as a state that's chosen to be a non-sales tax state, I thought that's an unfair imposition on our retailers. So I opposed it.
My name's John Flannery. I live about a mile west of here. You mentioned earlier, the subject came up around media consolidation, Citizens United, and it's a fundamental problem that underlies really everything that people are bringing up tonight. The conversation in Washington is broken, and whether it's through media consolidation is part of that. You mentioned Citizens United is part of that. And Citizens United is really just a small part of that. It's that has to do with campaign financing, but corporations also impose influence through the lobbying. They're using Citizens United is wrong because it gave constitutional protections to the corporate management using their shareholders' money to express opinions that those shareholders might not agree with. And they're allowed to do that through lobbying of Congress also. They can run ads extolling the benefits of fracking, all sorts of political activity. It's just wrong because it's not their money. So that's a major part of the dysfunction in Washington, D.C. A little more than a year ago, we sat down with members of Move to Amend, and Charlie and I were there as part of a conference call, teleconference. And you did not, at that point, were not ready to support Move to Amend's language. And I actually applaud you for that. It shows that you're taking this question seriously. I did not bring it up at the time, but actually I have some of those same concerns. That they want to take, yes, corporations don't have rights, but individuals do have rights. And if we let corporations be regulated in any way, it could infringe on the rights of individual people. Most people in Move to Amend, when you confront them with that, they'll say, oh yeah, we don't want to take rights from individual people. But then if we leave the Supreme Court in charge of drawing that line, then we're back to where we started, and it's a worthless exercise. So what I'm asking you to do in DC is propose a constitutional amendment which will actually draw that line, saying that if people assemble for the purpose of expressing a political opinion, then those rights can't be taken away from them, but other organizations should stay out of politics.
Thank you. So there is this huge set of issues. And let me give you an example of the concern I have. After Citizens United, a company that had a huge net profit, and we have some very, very large companies, can spend a small fraction of those net profits and basically flood out the voice of millions of Americans. It goes back to this issue of and by the people, for the people, versus powerful. And to give you if we take what Exxon made as a net profit in 2012, during the presidential year, if they had spent 6% of that in the presidential campaign, they would have spent as much as all the rest of America in every form on the presidential. One company, one boardroom, I don't know how many board members they have, if it's a dozen or 25, but one board decision. And both the potential to do that, or to do that in governor's races, US Senate races, House races, or take the Koch brothers and the money that can come from the coal and oil companies, it shifts and it is a corrosive, corrupting influence, that size of money outweighing millions of Americans on democracy. And so that I have a huge concern about it. I have sponsored a couple different versions of amendments, and scholars keep coming forward and wrestling with how you do this just right. One version of an amendment that I sponsored was Tom Udall's, which said basically Congress has the power to regulate the raising and spending of corporate campaign funds, or campaign funds I think in general. So, but in the near term, a constitutional amendment is not going to get a supermajority in the House and Senate. And there are some very real things that can be done right now. And in your comment, I think I heard you say that an owner should have a right to know how the money is spent. Did you say that?
Good. I would endorse that.
Okay.
I think they have the right to insist that it not be spent to express views of the president.
So the SEC could tomorrow say that if you are an owner of a company, you have a right to know how they spend their political funds on both campaigns and lobbying. That would create transparency through the vast bulk of the enterprises and of the big enterprises in America. That could be done tomorrow. And then the 501c4 loophole merits examination. Now, there are folks who said, you know, we want to use a charitable structure to do our political activity. And they found just the right vehicle. Because the law for the 501c4 social welfare organizations says the money has to be spent exclusively on social welfare activities. And the IRS, when they wrote the regulation to implement it, has a sentence in the regulation that says exclusively means primarily. That's Orwellian. The regulation changes 100% standard into a 50% standard. And that is the loophole that's been taken advantage of, and it's by groups on the left and groups on the right. There's nothing, because there are folks who donate throughout the spectrum who like the anonymity of the social welfare loophole. But if you're going to have transparency, you have to have it across the spectrum. And so I've been advocating that we close that loophole, so political spending goes through political vehicles, not through not through charitable vehicles. Those two things could be done now with no legislation. Then we could have passed the Disclosure Act. We had 59 votes twice for disclosure of timely disclosure on all political donations. We couldn't get the 60th vote to close debate. This goes back to the challenge we have, and I appreciate your applause on the filibuster comments at the beginning, but that is only a start because we only got changed the piece related to nominations. The legislative side, we are still paralyzed on, and so much more to do on that. If we'd had that, if we had had a situation where 41 folks said that they want more debate, one of them has to actually stand up and debate, and the American people could have seen senators defending secrecy for a week or so, I think we would have gotten our 60th vote. But we didn't. And so I'm still pushing for reforms in that area. Anyway, I've probably said enough on it for right now, but I want to keep examining the different versions of the constitutional amendment side. But parallel to that, I think we need to be pushing the administration, the executive